So, what I got here is theoretically what is a Cutmaster Utica, New York, USA fighting utility knife. It is from the World War II era, and it was my grandpa's, and he was in World War II in the Navy, shipped out of L.A. or out of San Diego, I guess. I don't know. I think they were living in L.A. at the time that he got drafted or he signed up. Anyway, and this was his knife. I don't know if he used this in World War II. I've done a little research on it, and apparently, as I understand it, if it is marked Cutmaster like this, and this could be completely wrong, but that these were post-war produced knives. Like I think the knives were probably available to finish and then, you know, sell. But I think they might have been put together. This particular one possibly was put together from spare parts. But it was my grandpa's, and he was in World War II, and he was in the Navy. And there's a sheath that comes with it. So my dad has had this for as long as I'm aware of, because funny enough, this knife right here, when I was like in elementary school or so, my buddy and I chopped down a bunch of trees to make a raft. I think we got in a mild amount of trouble for cutting the trees down that we did because they were western larch, and we were doing this in the springtime, and they hadn't bloomed with their needles yet. And a larch is kind of a cross between a coniferous and a deciduous tree. Like it does produce cones, and it does have needles instead of like broadleaf, but it has needles. But they do shed them. They do fall in the fall. They shed them in the fall. So it's kind of a unique tree. Anyway, so they're just poles basically, and we figured they were dead, and we went ahead and cut them down. Technically I didn't get any trouble, but I think I got talked to about it. Anyway, so confirm. These things do chop. Also, you can see it does have that recurve on it. And I never did sharpen this at that time anyway, so I wasn't the one that jacked the blade up. It always had a triangular saw file just jammed in the sheath, and I think pretty sure that's gone. Yeah, because I've been kind of using this for the last week or so, and it's not poked down in there. Anyway, but yeah, so if you look at a K, so here's a K bar, kind of like the same design as the newer generation. Even if you look at kind of like what they say anyway, is it's got leather. It's like the K bar fighting utility knife, 7-inch blade. I don't know, is it 17 or 1800 inch blade stock on this? And then with a leather stack handle that K bar makes still. The blade shape is pretty much exactly like this one. So this Cutmaster is actually a little bit different. Like the clip part, you can see. So it wasn't quite as broad of a blade, deep of a blade, I don't think. It was always kind of shaped like this, more like I think. Well, my dad said it was a bayonet. I don't know. He said it was a grandpa's bayonet, so I don't even know if he knows. But I'm sure that my grandpa was issued a K-bar at some point or had one. I don't know. I'm kind of happy about that because, I mean, like, if you were in World War II, would you want your jackass grandson running around with your knife chopping trees down? Maybe. Could be worse things. So this thing's lived, and I'm going to take this back here in the next couple days. Let's put it back in my dad's shop before he knows it's missing. I have been kind of putting a little bit of an edge on it. I think he must have actually sharpened this thing because I think it was always dull. And I think he did go ahead and put a little bit of an edge on it. And then I've been use my Sharp Baker minimally, but the thing will cut phone book paper. I mean, it is sharp. It's the amount it's worn away. I don't think it might have had a hollow grind. It might have a hollow grind in it. Anyway, pretty cool blade though, huh? So yeah, it's 7-inch blade, just exactly like this. I mean, I measured it. I used my handy dandy tape measure. It's pretty slick. 7-inch blade. I don't know, what are they? 12 inches overall, about 12 ounces. A little bit lighter, I think, with a leather sheath. This one, I think, is a little heavier. Uh, like if you're actually going to use that, that's not Kydex. That's whatever nylon, plastic nylon. But somebody in the past has used it, has batoned with it, with a hammer maybe. I don't know. It's pretty peened. Like the top is kind of peened off on both sides. Try to get the focus a little bit better. And you can see that. Well, that's probably me, honestly. But absolutely bomber. I mean, this thing, like, there's no loose parts. Because if this has, I'm assuming this is kind of like that rat tail tang, just like a K-bar. And then this thing, how they press this on. I mean, there's no rattle, no movement whatsoever. And I know that we thrashed on it pretty hard growing up. And then, my dad probably did as well himself. And then my grandpa, he had obviously used it. He probably just used it. If it was not what he had in World War II. I mean, I like to kind of think that it was, but just in case if it wasn't, he probably had a K-bar or something different. But one thing I've kind of noticed or thought about was lengthwise on this thing. So they haven't changed, like, this particular design, like the World War II era fighting utility knife. They haven't really changed the dimensions a whole lot. Like, that might actually be a better blade shape as far as the clip goes for kind of all-around utility use, as opposed to this. I mean, I like this thing. It's a razor, scalpel like, but it's a little thin up there. I mean, when I do bushcraft, I don't really, whatever. If I'm out doing something like that, I don't baton. I think if I was going to build something, I need to square off some parts to make them fit together. Yeah, I could see that. Kind of like using it like a chisel, definitely. I think I've probably done that in the past with some knife, but as far as like splitting wood, no, I don't have ever. Native Americans, Indians never did that. Probably Europeans didn't either. I think it's kind of a newer concept. It's kind of ridiculous unless you're building something. Anyway, that's just my theory, or the way I roll, the way I was taught, I should say. But one thing I have noticed about these is they're dimensionally the same. There might be a quarter inch if you lined them up exactly and measured the whole thing out. I mean, to me, that's looking exactly the same. They're like that 11.875 inches or whatever it is. Same dimensions. Hasn't changed over the years. So like 60 years, well, 80 years really since World War II. So however long the design was around, even before World War II, they haven't changed, because this is the newer version. They haven't changed a thing on it. This is probably, well, actually this knife should be, because I bought it in 2007. Yeah. Then I owned one previously to that too. So this one, the newer ones, I'm assuming haven't changed a bit. The only other example I can think of that dimensionally has not changed. They've changed some of the newer Buck 110s these are rounded off. This is a newer version of the Buck 110, but the older ones were flat, not sculpted or rounded. But dimensionally, exactly the same. And I think even weight-wise, like they haven't changed a thing. Some things just they don't change because apparently they don't need to. Obviously, there's newer versions of these that are much lighter weight, but they still produce this. And then with a K-bar, I think they have bigger ones and they have smaller ones. But as far as like the original style goes, it hasn't changed a bit. You can see like different sheaths. Like this one's kind of nice because you can carry it scout style, I guess you call it, horizontally or vertically. I have carried this horizontally. like on my small of my back, like on my back. It's kind of a pain in the ass because I didn't really have to do it. And then this one, of course, you would just carry this vertically or throw it in your pack. But if you were in imminent danger needing to draw this to defend yourself or to attack, obviously you want it on your belt or handy anyway. But I'd say this knife is from the 40s, regardless if it was in the war. It's held up pretty good. It's probably never been oiled. Oh wait, ha! Stand by. I found. So I just pulled this out of the sheath. So this is what was used, and I don't for how long I don't know. But it's just a triangular saw file for a chisel tooth on a chain. Pretty brutal. So that was stowed in here somehow. Down in that region. That's kind of cool. It's a little extra little pocket. Maybe that's what you won't want to put too short of a stone in there. Huh? Anyway, yeah, had this knife. Figure I'd shoot a video on it. I got a couple other thoughts, like say on the coronavirus at the given time that we're in. My advice, at least from my point of view, in my position geographically and economically and topographically even, and socially, demographically, you should avoid social media, Facebook, because there's so much misinformation out there and just stupid bullshit. Like stupid bullshit. Well, I won't even say it's misinformation. It's just stupid bullshit that people say. Because like you can know somebody and they can just put down their thoughts. It's ridiculously ignorant. Or they could I don't know, repost something that some other ignoramus has said, and you're like, has to be the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. And it could very well be up there in the top 10 of most ridiculous things. I just read one today, and I had this thought, because I don't do social media. Like, it's as close as I get, really. I do have a Facebook account, but everybody should be aware how stupid that is. Anyway, so what I've been doing though, just to see what's going on, because my work depends on a lot of this stuff, is the CDC sites. Each state, it appears, has their own CDC site where you can kind of, depending on what county or city you're in, or both, or in state or region, you can see what's going on, how many people are being tested, kind of real time almost, and how many people are infected, at least that they know of. And obviously at this point, on the 24th of March, those numbers are still going up, not exponentially, but they're going up in a steep gradient. That's really all you need to know. I mean, in my area, there's none known of, and that's nice. I think that this whole not lockdown, but this whole kind of just distancing, everybody's distancing, social distancing, and that's actually an old term. I was watching a documentary. I think it was it might have even been like the 1918. That term was actually used, social distancing. Towns across the country, I've seen some documentaries, towns across the country are having their own quarantines, trying to keep people out. It never worked 100%, but it helps slow things down. So this whole thing going on now, it sucks. And I mean, part of me says, well, if it's going to get around anyway, might as well just let it happen. Personally, I think it's smart what's going on to a certain extent. I just heard some bad news because I also teach fire classes, that one of the venues that had a class scheduled for April 3rd was pushed back to May 3rd. And then now I found out that it's going to be completely canceled, because in this area, this geographic area that I'm in currently, that I was going to teach this class in, they're expecting the coronavirus to be at its peak at that point, or somewhere in the peak area of what is forecasted for around here, which yeah, okay. Sure. It's hard to look that far in the future because that's like a month and a half out. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, about a month and a half, I guess, maybe a little bit more. I mean, it's affected my life. Anyway, so um, yeah, we'll kind of see how it goes. Anyway, I was just like encourage you to like just look at the. I mean, that's what I'm doing is I kind of reading statistics and whatnot for like say football or baseball. I mean, you go to the numbers, you go to the statistics, and that's another. Sorry, I'm kind of like all over the place on this part, but like I did see this other post that somebody put up of a graph of countries with coronavirus like right now and like the numbers of people infected and it's like Italy, Iran, France, US, China was not on that graph. So like I immediately think, this is bullshit. If you want to know if don't be putting up a graph of like a global graph of the countries and like the highest people infected and don't it's like the home run record. You don't throw out Hank Aaron or Lou Gehrig or Roger Maris's like home run records. You don't take one of those out of a graph that you're looking at if you're comparing home runs for a season or for a career. You don't take the you don't take the players out, right? The major players, and China's obviously the number one player. They have the most home runs right now. So that's what I mean. It's just misinformation, bullshit. Who knows why? Who's putting these up? I didn't look at that closely into it, but there's some good documentaries that are like pre 2019 that kind of go into pandemics, historical pandemics, epidemics, things that are being forecasted, and it's all coming to fruition right now, or it's all coming to light now. Like this whole thing is that they've been predicting this for a long time. There's a Bill Gates one. I haven't seen that one, but apparently there's a Bill Gates one. There's one that I actually recommend. I think if you just get on YouTube and look up like pandemics, University of Utah or University of Arizona, maybe, or something like to that point. There was one that I watched that's really good. The guy goes through like why 1918 happened, why people in their 20s and 30s were affected more so than older or even younger people. It all has to do with when you're born and what flu virus was floating around at that time. The corona, so like if you're 20 to 30 years old in 1918, you had no resistance to that flu that went around, the Spanish flu they call it, right? But if you're born like 10 years before that, you would have, because it's all that H1N1. They go through all of it. But all the things that make up these viruses, like H1N1, H2N2, H1N8, all of the different strains, the vaccines that we've come up with in the meantime, they didn't know what a virus was at that point. They just knew what bacteria and germs were. They could look at that under a regular microscope. You can't see a virus unless you have an electron microscope, and they didn't have electron microscopes that time, even through the 50s, I don't think. Maybe in the 50s, post World War II, they could. Anyway, really interesting, good stuff. It kind of explains it. It kind of puts everything into perspective of what's going on. They knew this was going to happen. And it's going to happen again. And I think the only thing that got us caught with our pants down in this one was the way that this virus is working, like who it attaches to. Another thing that I've heard, I can't confirm it, obviously, because I'm not a scientist, but blood types. So whatever blood type you have has to do with how this particular coronavirus is going to affect you, perhaps to a certain extent anyway. So stuff to look into, I should say. Is that you need to be careful. I'd follow all the recommendations the CDC is putting out, obviously, but also like personally, I think you might want to look this up. But blood type, and I'm apparently lucky. In fact, if what I heard kind of went against what I was, I probably would just discounted and went and thought about it. But for what I've heard, my blood type perhaps might help out on it. Anyway. This will be all over with, and we'll be back to normal. Have a good one.